Welcome to episode 13 of the Free Spirit Academy podcast with self-empowerment coach Kyla Sokoll-Ward. Free Spirit Academy is about you being fully you. My name is Randy Moss, and I'm an eating psychology coach and Kundalini yoga teacher, bringing you conversations about freedom from rigid diets, painful body image, and never-ending cycles of self-help and self-improvement. This is about honoring our own bodies and our purest self-expression. Welcome to the podcast. Hey everyone, I hope you're well. I'm recording this just before my wife and I are headed out of town for a work trip, and we're going to France, we're going to Paris, and I'm pretty excited. We've never been out of the country together. I get a little bit travel anxious, but I think it's going to be good. And in the meantime, since we're going to be gone for a couple of weeks, I'm sharing some old interviews from my YouTube channel that I did a couple of years ago. And it's funny listening back to these because I can actually hear how much more in my body I am and how much more relaxed I am, even just this smallish amount of time later. And I have to try to not cringe because my voice, as I listen back to these, sounds so pinched and so shallow to me, like I was hardly taking a deep breath, but whatever. I think these early conversations are valuable, so here we are. Today, the conversation you'll be hearing is from my friend Kyla Sokoll-Ward. And I have also watched her blossom so beautifully in the last couple of years, from a brand new, baby intuitive eating coach to this fierce self-love teacher whose Instagram stories have become so captivating because you can just see how lit up she is when she gets on. It's really cool. But in this conversation, we dove into the world of orthorexia and what happens when a beautiful intention becomes obsessive. What happens when we start finding our identity in a diet label rather than following intuition and body wisdom and our own evolution. You'll hear us talk about the phrase, and maybe you've said this, maybe you've heard this, I'm not doing this to be skinny, I'm doing this to be healthy. And how that can allow us to continue pushing something that isn't working, because I don't know, I shouldn't say that that's never true. I'll just speak for me and I'll speak for Kyla and say that when we said that, there was... I think there was maybe a desire for it to be true, but with an underlying really deep desire to get the dream body. And we talk about how we can create a sense of purpose around finding this perfect body, so-called perfect body, but why the hunt for the perfect body or the attempt at the creation of the perfect body isn't actually what we're looking for, no matter how purposeful it feels. And we break down her blog post called The Secret to Ending All Binges. And she offers some incredibly practical, useful advice for anyone struggling with food obsession and binge eating. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kyla. All right, here we are. Hello, friends. This is Randy Moss from Randy Moss Wellness. And today I'm with my friend and fellow coach, Kyla. Hey, Kyla.
Hi.
I'm going to read you Kyla's full bio because I don't want to miss any bit of this goodness. Kyla is a food and body love coach who received her training from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and she is on a mission to help women make peace with food. She teaches women themselves from food rules, embrace their bodies, and live through intuition. And after years of beating herself up for lack of both willpower and six-pack abs, she decided it was time to change how she treats herself. She's here to make the same happen for you, so you can ditch the diet and fall in love with yourself. So for anybody who hears that and is like, I don't want to ditch my diet, and if I love myself, I'm just going to sit on the couch all day and eat bonbons. I don't know what people eat on the couch. Why would they want to fall in love with themselves? What was your journey? Where did you start out and how did you end up here?
Yes. Well, I first of all started probably when I was in college, my freshman year of college. When I was about 18, I got really, really interested in nutrition on a totally innocent level, very much just was fascinated by what food could do for our bodies. It was not motivated by weight loss or anything at that point. And I got more and more into nutrition, more and more fascinated. And at the same time in my life, my body was changing a bit. I was gaining a little bit of weight. And by a little bit, I mean like probably literally a few pounds. But it freaked me out. And I thought, well, I know so much about nutrition now. Like I know what food does to me. And I started to really control my food and taking more and more things out of my diet over the years. And eventually this got to a very sort of like orthorexic place with food of feeling like I couldn't eat certain foods because I was terrified of all these terrible things that food could do, and down to like a cellular level of what happens to our bodies with food.
Give us specifics. Like, what exactly was going through your head? Were you on a particular sort of diet? What was freaking you out?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was never about a specific diet. I did eat vegetarian, but that was also not motivated by weight loss or anything. That was like purely like an ethical thing. But I still had very strong ideals about like people shouldn't eat meat, people shouldn't eat dairy. Like I was vegan for a while as well, and felt very strongly about that like veganism was the way, though I didn't necessarily preach it to everyone.
You felt that way for yourself, and you also felt that way for the rest of the world.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting because I was never really motivated by like making the number on the scale go down. And I very much preach that like, I'm not doing this to be skinnier. I'm doing it to be healthier. Like, I just want to be healthy, the healthiest myself that I can be. But in reality, like, yes, I wanted to be healthier, but like in my mind, that meant becoming thinner as well. And as long as I still had this extra weight on my belly, then I was not healthy. And again, by extra weight, I mean like a few pounds. And, but in my mind, it was just like totally unacceptable. And, yeah, you know, so eventually, of course, all of this backfired and I started to binge eat eventually, which I think was both a combination of food restriction and going through changes in my life at that time, like in the middle of college somewhere, where I was very lonely. I didn't have a ton of friends. I was going through a lot of transitions and just didn't know how to deal with it. And yeah, and these binges just started happening like first just every so often, and then years down the line, I was binge eating every single night.
And had you ever struggled with binge eating prior to this?
No, never. Yeah, and I didn't know. It was very strange to me at first. I was just sort of thinking, I remember the first time that I binged. It was when I was in college. I was probably 19, and I was eating chocolate-covered pretzels, and I was just like, and I realized I'd gone through like half the bag without even noticing. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, what am I doing? What's wrong with me? And I just put them away. And then I went back to them like 5 minutes later. And I just thought like, that was weird. But then it became like a ritual for me. And yeah, and then when I was binge eating like almost every night, it was not a matter of like, can I do this or can I not binge eat, but rather, when is this going to happen? What am I going to eat and how? And it was unbelievably painful. Of everything in my food and body journey, binges were the most emotionally and, of course, physically painful thing. And then, thank God, I hit a breaking point one day. And that breaking point, I think this is just a good part of like my whole story, because I know that so many people can relate to this specific incident, is that I was living with a roommate, and I was eating her ice cream because I would never buy ice cream. Oh my God, I hate ice cream. But she bought ice cream all the time, and I thought she was crazy for it. And I was eating her ice cream from the carton in front of the freezer and standing up, and I was crying while eating because my stomach hurt so bad because I'd eaten so much food like prior to getting to that ice cream. And I was crying. I was in so much pain, and I could not stop eating. I could not put the spoon down. And I just thought like, oh my God, I cannot keep doing this. Like, I am hurting myself. And and like, I mean, as if I weren't hurting myself before, but like I'm in physical pain and I don't care. And like, I want to hurt myself, you know, with food. And so I, at that point, started working with a coach, and she really helped me like turn my life around and figure out what types of blocks in my life and in my mind were keeping me in this cycle of feeling like I deserve to be in pain. It really helps me bring like pleasure and joy into my life in other ways. And now I'm helping other people do the same.
Are you comfortable talking about like what sort of blocks there were that you feel like were really in the way and making you feel like punishing yourself was a nice idea?
Yes, sure. I had a lot of shame, and we all do. We all have so much shame about different things, and I had never really, I wasn't familiar with shame at all at the beginning of that whole process. But I realized I had a lot of shame around boredom. That was a big one for me. I had a lot of shame around my personality and who I was. And I realized that was the thing that led me to wanting to control my body. So to give a little bit more context with that, I, as a child, received a lot of messages that I was not good enough, which we all are given those messages. Like, children receive that in a million ways all the time. It's hard for children, I think, especially now, to not feel that way, especially when it comes to body image. Yeah, like none of us are good enough when it comes to body image and what the world has to tell us about that. But yeah, so I really internalized these messages that there was something wrong with me. I made things more difficult, and that I was too emotional. I was not relaxed enough. I wasn't cool. I wasn't chill. Like everyone's chill and cool. And like that was not me, because I always had like anxiety about things. And so then like into my adult life in my 20s, I was feeling all this shame around the fact that I had emotions. And that's what really led me into the binge eating, was trying to literally push down those emotions that I felt like something was wrong with me for having. And then also, because I believed there was something wrong with me, I thought, well, I'm not a lovable person, so I might as well have this killer body. So because people will not love me for my personality because I am horrible, then at least they will be jealous of me when I walk across the room. I look incredible. And that was really my thinking, was like, you know what? No one's going to like me, but at least they'll be jealous of what I look like, because I'm going to be the hottest girl in the room. I'm going to have like these incredible abs and amazing legs, and I'm just going to walk around like it's effortless and have this amazing healthy diet that everyone is jealous of that they can't keep up with. Yeah. So, yeah, and I really felt like that was the best I could do with my life, that like people, and this wasn't something I really thought about consciously, but it was through this inner work that I realized, like, oh, this is why I want to control my body so badly. And just learning to break all of that down, strip all of that away, and realize that I have things to offer to the world besides what I look like, and that there are a lot of very valuable things in my intense emotions, and in my and that feeling boredom is not something to be ashamed of, and that like we're all just dealing with like this universal shame, like it happens to all of us, and that I don't need to go into like a shame spiral and binge eating because of it.
Prior to having that realization, did you at any point get what you thought you wanted? Did you like get the body you thought you wanted? Did people admire it, and was it fulfilling, or was it like, oh, well, that's not it?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I had that, and maybe still have, you know, like people always admire what they think they don't have. I definitely had that traditionally like sexy fit body. Like you could see cuts in my stomach, like muscle cuts. I mean, like I had like definition in my abdomen. I had really good upper body strength. I was in the gym like several days a week and not eating enough, definitely. And yeah, and people would tell me like, wow, you have such amazing willpower, and I can't believe you don't eat meat or dairy or anything. Like, you have such amazing willpower, and like, your body is so great. And I hated my body. Not all the time, but I was absolutely unsatisfied with it. And it didn't matter. Like, I got the abs, I wanted better abs. I got the arms, I wanted better arms. I got the ass, I wanted a better ass. Like, nothing was good enough. I was not good enough because, again, all of my stakes in how I felt about myself was in my body. And so, like, to me, I was my body.
Yeah.
And it was just so unfulfilling. And the thing, oh God, like, the way I would talk to my body, and so sad, like, how hard I would push myself, and the terrible things I had to say about myself, no matter what my progress was. Never positive things to say about it.
So for anyone who's listening and they're like, but that is what I want. Like, once my body looks like this, then I'll be confident. Then I'll be happy. Then people will like me. Like, that really is what I want. What I would ask them if that was my client, and I'm sure you have similar questions for your clients, is how do you imagine that that's going to make you feel? So when you were back in that state thinking like, oh, this is what I want, underneath that, what was the feeling that you were looking for?
Yeah. It was connection. It was self-love. It was, I think a big part of it was purpose as well. In that I felt like my purpose was to become the fittest, hottest girl in the world. And I was working so hard at it. And why wasn't I getting there? Why wasn't I the hottest girl in the world yet? And, yeah, and just needing this sense of something important to work towards. And it's not to say I wasn't doing important things. And that's the thing, is I was doing incredible things in my life, and I just didn't care because I wasn't happy with anything because I was too focused on what my body was not. And that's also just really sad. Yeah, I think, when I would look at thin women or women whose bodies I admired, I thought like, wow, it must be so easy for her to love herself because she looks like that. And I think that's such a huge misconception that people think that like, well, yeah, people might look at me and say, well, of course she loves herself. Look at the way she looks. Yeah. And like, oh my God, if only you knew like what I have dealt with in the self-love world. And we can look at anyone and say that, like, oh, well, you're perfect. Of course you love yourself. And you just have no idea what's going through other people's heads. And I wanted the connections and the joy in her life that I assumed of other women with this free body. I just assumed that they had so much fun and happiness, and that they had so many friends and significant others in their lives that I did not have, or at least that I did not appreciate, that I could not see. Yeah. And I wanted that deep sense of purpose and connection.
And we always assume that the way that we want to feel is outside of us, like waiting for, once I get the body, once I get the partner, once I get the new job, then I'm going to feel this way. But if we don't have any sense of what it's like to tap into that now, and it's always possible to tap into that now, then it's not going to be on the other side of that thing. Like, guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that you mentioned that I also thought was really important, about halfway through your story, you said the binge eating was part emotional and it was part due to restriction. And this is something that I do not think is talked about often enough. In the last group program I did, I had a whole module called "It's Not About the Food," except when it's about the food, because underlying all of it, there is like emotional reasons why you're restricting usually, and there's a lot of stuff to work on. But a lot of the physical pull towards needing to eat is because you're not eating enough.
Right.
And I remember like, God, I read all the emotional eating books and what is wrong with me? And I did everything except for feed myself enough.
Right. Yeah.
You agree?
Totally. I very much, I would eat these like teeny tiny meals. Not always. Again, for me, it wasn't always about eating less. It was about like eating perfectly according to my healthiness that I followed. And I was very into Ayurveda. I'm still really into Ayurveda. I think it's beautiful, which is like ancient Indian medicinal way of living. And it's really focused on like energy, and I'm sure you know about it, Randy. Yeah, and in Ayurveda they say, and again, like Ayurveda is not a diet; it's a medicinal way of life and of looking at the world. But I took this as like, this is how I need to eat. In Ayurveda, they say that like lunch is generally like the biggest meal of the day because of all these factors of like nature and the sun, and that at night our bodies are quieting down. We don't need to eat as much. So in my mind, I was like, I don't care how hungry I am in the middle of the day, I need to eat a huge meal. And at night, I'm going to eat like a half of a salad. And if that is not satisfying to me, then there's something very wrong with my body. Then I'm not healthy enough. Mm-hmm. It should be, according to Ayurveda, the way that we're all supposed to be living. And if that's not enough for me, there's something wrong. And of course, I was freaking hungry all the time. And part of that for me was also like, after a while, I especially when I was vegan, veganism was really lovely and worked wonderfully on my body for a long time. And then after a while, it just didn't anymore. And I was so hungry all the time. And I just refused to believe that it could be anything with my veganism. And that like, maybe I just needed some eggs. And that was really hard for me to come to terms with. But once I did, like, I felt so much more satisfied with food. So just having the willingness to like break down those preconceived beliefs and to just experiment, like just give yourself a little wiggle room to experiment, and just produce huge changes that are super beneficial.
Well, it's interesting because we're talking a lot about the perils of sort of, well, first of all, restricting too much, not eating enough, and following rules and guidelines to a T. And ultimately, it's all about like not listening to your body and how this can spiral into just needing to eat because we're not connected, we're not listening. But what I also found very interesting is I feel like there's this misconception too that, well, if focusing too much on health or diets or rules is the problem, then I just need to go in the opposite direction and eat all the things all the time, which isn't listening to your body either. Like, it's kind of the same thing, but in the other direction. And so I loved that you said, I'm still into Ayurveda. So like, you've given up diets and restricting and rules, but you still love the things that work. You still love the things that pique your curiosity. Like, there's this amazing middle road that we can live in where we can be curious and interested and experimental and still like listen and care about what works for our bodies without necessarily subscribing to a plan or an idea of the way that things should be. So I was really glad that you said that. One of my favorite posts of yours, and I'm particularly interested in this because binge eating was such a thing for me for 15 or 16 years. And I was shocked at people's stories when they said, I've healed from binge eating. I was like, yeah, right. No, you haven't. Or you're tomorrow or whatever. But like, I know now that that's not true because I'm living it. And so you have this whole post about sort of the secret to ending binges. And what I want to do is read chunks of that and break it down and get you to go deeper on it. So I've got several chunks of this post that I want to go into. And I will link this at the bottom. It's called The Secret Ingredient to End All Binges. And in one section you say, eventually I realized that I didn't have a willpower problem. I had a problem with my relationship to food and my relationship to myself. So let's talk willpower, because I thought this, and almost everybody that comes to me for binge eating issues thinks this. you mean it's not all about willpower, like not being able to stick to your diet, or not like this hand to mouth thing where you can't stop? It's not about willpower. What's it about, Kyla?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a common thing I hear from so many women who reach out to me. It's like, oh, I just have such bad willpower. Like, I just can't stop binge eating, so my willpower sucks. And, or people tell me like, oh, now that you're not binging anymore, you must just have cultivated such amazing willpower. And like, that word just makes me cringe. Like, oh, I hate it. Because if I were just like, if I'd been a daily binge eater and I had to willpower my way out of not binge eating anymore, like, that's a hell of a lot of willpower. It just sounds miserable. But anyway, it's the thing with listening to your body, and as a result, possibly not eating as much, and maybe you'll be eating more, and that will change every single day because our bodies change every single day, is that it's just receiving information from your body, from the foods you eat, from how you're feeling each day, and making an informed decision of what would feel the best. And doesn't mean you always have to choose the thing that would feel the best, but at least you have the information, and now you can make a choice versus I'm going to ignore everything, tough it out, not eat X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to say I'm going to ignore everything and eat all the things and do it in the opposite way. But yeah, just using everything as information and saying like, okay, I have these choices. This is what I can do. And Randy, I know this is something you've talked to me about so many times, is that like there are no right and wrong, but here's how these things could result. And now I get to decide what I want to do. So even if eating a little bit of extra food might make my stomach hurt a little, it's still my choice. I get to decide to do it. Maybe the food's really delicious and I want to keep eating. Happens to me all the time. Like, I eat a lot of delicious food. Sometimes I want a little extra even though I'm full. That's okay. This is something normal eaters do all the time. And just knowing that like, this is not about ignoring something, it's about choosing.
Really big point. It's not about right or wrong or good or bad foods, because that plays directly in, like, willpower plays directly into that idea, right? Like, we need to have willpower against the bad things. But when there are no more bad things, there's so much less resistance, right? Like, we can relax. And I don't, until you have that experience, it's hard to believe that you can just choose a variety of not right, not wrong options from this state, but it's completely possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next part that I want to highlight is a bit later on in the post. You say, I traded criticism for compassion. I gave my body love each day, and instead of torturing her with crazy workouts that I hated, I started to trust myself around food, and I broke down my need to binge all the time. I learned how to enjoy donuts, lasagna, and chocolate without binging. And here's the big part that's in all bold. You say, I fell in love with myself, and now I live like a damn queen inside my own body. How do you fall in love with yourself? Why? If you feel like, especially for somebody that's binging, it's likely that they're also dieting, which likely means that they feel like they need improvement. So why bother to fall in love with yourself if you still need to improve?
Yes.
I should say why and how, very practically. How does one go about doing that after they realize why it's not such a bad idea?
Yeah, I think, first of all, recognizing that there's nothing wrong with us is a big one. And that there's a difference between giving yourself the freedom and the permission and knowing you deserve to feel amazing and working on improving your external environment, or your internal environment rather, in order to feel better, because you deserve to feel good. That is different from being a project that needs to be worked on, or a problem that needs to be solved, rather. And let me go back to your original question. Can you say it one more time? Actually, I'm sorry. I'm like losing track.
It's okay. I started with one thing and then went to another and then gave it several points. So that was probably my fault.
No.
For somebody, I'll frame it this way. So say somebody comes to you and they have heard about this whole thing of like, you just need to fall in love with yourself. And they're like, well, hold on. I don't need to fall in love with myself because I have to improve all of this and then I'll love myself. Yes. How do you convince somebody that that's not the healthiest route to take, not the most sustainable route to take? And then practically, how do they do it?
Yeah. I think there's a big fear around like, well, if I love myself, I'm giving up. Mm-hmm. If I love myself, I am throwing in the towel. If I love myself, I will be the person sitting on the couch eating bonbons all day.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that, like we've said, that's not actually listening to your body. To do that every single day is not listening to your body. It doesn't mean you don't sit on the couch and eat bonbons sometimes. That sounds wonderful. But your body probably doesn't want to sit on the couch all day, every day. That wouldn't feel good.
It might feel good at first, though, right?
It might feel good at first. That's true. It would not be what anyone's body wants forever. In a long-term situation, no one's body never wants to move again.
Right.
Yeah. And people think like, I'll just stop caring if I love myself, if I decide to love myself. What people don't realize is that when you decide to love yourself, it is when you start caring about, does my body feel good doing these things? Does my body want to eat 100 boxes of Oreos in a row? I promise it doesn't. No one's body wants that. It wouldn't feel good. Does my body want to eat a vegan diet? We're all different with this, and it takes attention. It is not, I think these things are not difficult, but they're difficult because we have to cultivate a new skill of learning to listen to ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's the difficult part.
Yeah.
And knowing that like we deserve patience in that process is a big thing, because it is a decision to start loving yourself, but it is not an automatic thing that changes overnight.
Right.
It takes a lot of reversing of bullshit, to be frank, of things we've learned and internalized over a lot of years, probably. So practically, a way that this can start to happen is, again, with the mindset shift that you are not a problem to be solved. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things I always tell people is to start questioning everything. Mm-hmm. Question everything that you have believed about what you should eat, how you're supposed to look, what beautiful is, what happiness looks like, all of these things. Like, where did you learn that and when? And how do you know that it's true? Do you know that it's true? Is it true? How can you reframe it in a way that's actually serving you versus depressing you? And yeah, like the more that we can understand that all of this stuff is learned, meaning that we can unlearn it, mm-hmm. is a really big first step. And again, it takes time, but it is possible. And it is so.
Right. And I would also venture to say that for anybody that questions that, if you are working with Kyla or you are watching this video called How to End Binge Eating, I would ask you, have those beliefs worked up until this point?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The point that I got to when I realized, oh gosh, hating myself hasn't worked my entire life. So I took a leap of faith and tried something new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is like letting go of the expectation that like this will work and I'll be cured forever. I'll never binge again. I'll get skinny. I'll be happy. But rather looking at it as an experiment of, I'll try this now. I'll try loving myself. I'll give it a month, like, whatever, like giving it a short time frame of, I'm just going to try this and see what happens.
Yes.
This better be the thing that cures me.
Yes, rather than saying, well, I need to try and love myself so that I don't binge, or I need to question my beliefs so that I don't binge. I would say maybe try those things on as an experiment to get underneath why you're binging in the first place.
Yes.
Sort of like coming in through the back.
Yeah. Like, again, like giving yourself that information so that you can make the decision for yourself.
All right. So that's one big practical step.
Yes.
Anything else that comes to mind?
Doing something nice for yourself, making what's the word I'm looking for? Intentional steps in doing something nice for yourself every single day. And this could be something that takes 3 minutes, but being intentional about it is a really big deal. Because it's really, especially if it is something that's really small, like, for example, in the morning, I really like to just rub my feet with lotion. And like, it smells really good and it feels really good. And it's just a nice thing to do for myself every morning. And it's really easy to say, like, I'll do it tomorrow or the next day or never. And knowing that, like, if I don't put lotion on my feet in the morning, like, I'm not going to die. Like, it's not like I need to do this. So it's really easy to put off. But when you commit to doing something nice for yourself, that, like, rewires things in your brain. And that, like, this is something I am committing to doing. I'm committing to loving myself for 3 minutes of the day. And then it becomes a part of you. And you say, like, well, I need to give myself love every single day. What am I doing for self-love today?
Right. And we're cultivating that relationship with ourselves, right? Like, if we had a partner or even a child, we wouldn't neglect them and not ever do anything for them, or that relationship would start to dwindle. It's literally the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And just knowing that, like any other human in your life or in some way, you deserve love. You deserve to be treated nicely and be told nice things and to feel
from yourself more than anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The last part of this that I want to read is kind of the big one, and it came up a little bit earlier. Towards the end of your post, you say, you've been searching for solutions to end your binge eating, looking for the thing that'll make it stop for good. You're tired of spending every other night in the kitchen, standing amongst candy wrappers, empty jars of peanut butter straight to the bottom, and the leftovers you swore you'd save for tomorrow's lunch, wondering, how the hell can I keep doing this? Maybe you've even done a Google search, or 7, to find some kind of ingredient to make it all go away. Well, I've got one for you, and it's not another spoonful of raw coconut oil after your meal to suppress cravings. Gag. And then you have in caps, purpose. And that came up earlier too. And actually, I'm going to read this last little bit too. The point isn't so much to arrive somewhere in life and then suddenly the binges stop, but the more we listen to what our souls crave, the less need there is to stuff ourselves in order to cover up the hurt. So what sort of purpose was it that you found, and how do you feel like people go about finding a purpose? And first, I should say, you did mention that you sort of felt like your purpose was getting this body or being healthy or, presenting yourself in this certain way. So I think we always do have a purpose, whether we realize it or not, whatever our chosen purpose is. So what did it morph into?
Yeah. I think our purpose can change all the time. And even, I think, like, a big thing with having a morning ritual or doing affirmations, setting intentions, things like this, it's so powerful to just ask yourself, like, what do I want to focus on today? And like, that's your purpose for the day. You don't need to worry about, like, what is your life purpose. Like, as much as we think we know, that changes so drastically throughout our lives. And like, you don't need to worry about that yet. But yeah, just when I started to focus on, like, today I want to feel in flow. Today I want to feel light. And this doesn't mean I don't eat a lot. It just means that I want to feel like the energy, the embodiment of feeling this lightness within my body. Then being with that purpose and knowing, like, I have something I am accomplishing today. Then it just, like, you don't want to feel badly anymore. You don't want to speak to yourself badly. You don't want to wear clothes that you don't like. You don't want to eat food that makes you feel like crap, or eat an amount of it that makes you feel like crap. You want to feel good, because when you disconnect yourself from what your body wants, and you eat the 10 packets of Oreos and feel like crap physically afterwards, then it's hard to get back to that place of flow and of lightness, and or whatever it is that your intention for that day is. So yeah, the more I put myself into that place of like, how do I want to feel today? What do I want to do? What is going to feel best for me today? That really helped me to be on track, not on track, to be in a place of feeling good with food, and of making more aligned choices.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is huge. So rather than choosing one big external life purpose, or even an external day purpose, starting with, well, even if that's what comes to mind, how is that going to make me feel? So how is it that I want to feel? If I want to feel light, if I want to feel free, if I want to feel purposeful or turned on, or whatever it is that I want to feel, and then sort of building your day around that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Lastly, I want to talk about, you spelled out in one of your blog posts sort of the art of slowing down with food. And I think that this is so important because, one, in general, even for people that don't binge eat or eat compulsively, a lot of us are just speedy eaters. And I am of the opinion that how we eat, or first of all, how we do one thing is how we do anything. So how we eat is often how we do the rest of our lives. So if we're speeding through our meals, it's likely we're speeding through life. We're not noticing the nuance and the detail and all of the beauty and all of the things that could be enjoyed. So I don't know if you want to spell it out step by step the way that you did in your blog post, or if you just want to sort of walk everybody through how it is we can begin to slow down with our meals. And also, does this apply to a binge if we feel the urge to binge?
Yes, to all of it. Slowing down with food. I think there's a lot of like pressure, and I don't like the word hype, is not the word I'm looking for, but pressure, I guess, with mindful eating. I think mindful eating is a beautiful practice, and if it works for you, awesome, do it. But like mindful eating doesn't necessarily need to be like sitting and looking at the color of your apple for 10 minutes and just contemplating how beautiful this green is. Unless you wanted to, if that works for you, awesome, amazing. But like, it doesn't have to be that. But yeah, I think, so yeah, what I've written about in the blog post is like, first of all, when you're eating, sit the hell down, put it on a plate, like breathe, take 3 breaths. I still do this before I eat because like, yeah, I tend to like be eating on the way to sitting down to the table, and I know that like I need to sit down and just like be with myself for a moment before I start eating. And yeah, so, and again, like the point of like sitting down with a plate is because like you deserve to have a pleasurable eating experience. It's again, not so that you won't binge, not so you won't overeat. It's because you deserve to have a nice eating experience. Food is beautiful. Food is delicious. It deserves to be enjoyed. And
what if, I'm going to stop you, what if, because somebody is maybe in the habit of binging, that they're not able or ready to let it go and they don't feel like they deserve that experience, how could you get them to slow down with binging when they don't even feel like they deserve to be eating one more bite? They sort of just want to zone out and do it and stuff themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like mindful binging, if you call it that.
Yeah.
Super important, awesome practice. If you are a binge eater. Yeah, I think, yeah, if you're binge eating, you want to stand up in front of the cabinet and like eat M&Ms or whatever it is. Just taking like a moment, and again, like a baby step here, like you don't have to jump into the mindful eating part of just saying like, what feels good about this? That's a big one. What feels good about this? Why am I doing this? Because there's a reason.
We're actually doing it to torture ourselves, right?
Right. like, what feels good about this? What feels bad about it? And moving beyond just what feels bad physically, but like what is actually feeling bad? Getting into, but also taking into account, like, what do I feel like physically right now? Because oftentimes we don't realize it until we are like way over the edge physically. And being super aware of like what thoughts are coming up and what thoughts are disappearing as we're eating, and why it's comforting that certain thoughts are disappearing. If maybe like we don't feel the sadness that we felt 2 minutes ago because now we're full of food, like just being aware of like, okay, so there's a good reason why I'm doing this, because sadness feels bad and I don't want to feel the sadness. And like there's nothing wrong with me because I don't want to feel sadness, because being sad sucks, and you're just a human. None of us want to feel sad. And so again, having that information, knowing there's nothing wrong with you because of this, and then being able to make the choice of like, is this helping my sadness disappear forever? And maybe like, what could I really use right now? What might help, like really help the sadness in this moment, besides eating? And eating is a choice, it's an option. But is there something else that I really, really need? If I could have anything, what would it be? And can I give that to myself?
So it sounds like so much of this process is just about opening up and waking up and asking questions. I mean, it goes back to the same thing when we're learning to accept ourselves and love ourselves, instead of, I think the state that we're so often in when we're struggling with poor self-esteem or binge eating is this sort of like tight, contracted, we don't want to look at anything, we just sort of zone out and shove food in our face. And this is all about sort of like expanding and opening and actually looking at it, like actually being able to sit down with the food on your plate, even if it's 10 plates later, and be like, okay, I'm still here for this. I'm still here for this 10th plate of food. I'm still feeling and savoring and asking myself questions and really figuring out what's going on underneath all of this. So it's like tuning in rather than tuning out.
Yes.
Which is extremely difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think, when I first really started to slow down with food, and I remember my first experience with this, and it was like revolutionary for me. I realized like halfway through what I was eating that like it didn't taste as good as it did when I first started, and that I was starting to feel full. My stomach was starting to hurt from eating, and from that, because I had started so slowly and I was really savoring, like I was eating this delicious, amazing dessert, and I was really savoring it. And I was, from that point, from that space, able to make a decision of like, okay, I could keep eating. It's delicious. It's a valid choice. I can do that. Also, I could stop eating. I could still get to eat it later. It's not like just going in the trash. And maybe my stomach won't hurt after. Also an option. What do I want? And I chose to save it for later. And again, there's like no right or wrong. It's just options.
Right. And it's okay too, right? That if somebody starts out slowly and they're like, okay, I'm doing this mindful binging thing, and then halfway through they've sped up and they're shoving food in their face, it's okay actually to just notice and stop and start over and be like, whoa, I disappeared. Like, where did I go? I'm coming back. It's okay to come back and come back and come back and come back. Like, it's a practice.
Yes. And that's why, like, with a meditation practice, like, you don't do it once and never meditate again. Like, you have to keep coming back every single day or 3 times a day, whatever it is. Like, you don't just meditate and then get to that space and you stay there forever. Like, we're being pulled in a million directions all the time.
And you don't end up mindfully binging your life away, right? You binge mindfully so that you can get underneath what's going on, so that it disappears when it's ready to disappear, when you don't need it anymore.
Yes.
Awesome. So lastly, second to lastly, my work, as you know, and this is going to tie in so much with what we've talked about, is all about eating for how we want to feel, eating to feel good, moving to feel good, living in a way that feels really good. How do you apply that in your life? What does eating to feel good look like for you? What does moving to feel good look like? And how ultimately is it that you want to feel in your life currently?
Eating to feel good. Eating to feel good looks like having lots of options. That's a big thing for me right now. Having lots of options with food. So, being aware that I can have certain foods in my house that are like not traditionally healthy foods, and that like I have those there if I want to eat them. I also have foods that are traditionally very healthy because I also think those are delicious, and that they each provide me nourishment in different ways. And also a little bit of an element of not caring. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, that like there's, the not caring, of course, we don't just say, screw it, I'm just going to eat the M&Ms all day. But there's like a little bit of an element of like, if I eat some M&Ms, is it the most nutritionally dense food in the world? Absolutely not. But like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. And like eating the healthiest food in the world is like not my main priority in life right now. Yeah, and like that feels good. That feels freeing to just not care that like I'm gonna eat some M&Ms now. And also just being really kind to my body and being aware that I'm the only one that's going to decide how I'm going to eat. And I can't like blame it on some weird external factor, like saying that I need to suppress cravings with coconut oil. And that's because I'm not doing that. That's why I'm binging. Like, nope, I'm binging because I'm choosing to binge, and not in like a faulting type of way, but that like, this is my choice and I have the power here, all the power here. And yeah. That's eating to feel good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. Before I wrap things up, I want to invite you to come join the private Free Spirit Academy Facebook group, where I post videos, offer support, and answer questions on all things food and body freedom. And you'll also get a free copy of my ebook, The Eat to Feel Good Diet. I hope to see you there.